الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So as we will be continuing discussing the book Talkhis Nukhbatul Fikr by one of the Mashaykh of contemporary times, and this particular book is a mukhtasar, is a summary of the book that was authored by Hafiz Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala, that is renowned as Nukhbatul Fikr, and also have explanation. So inshallah ta'ala that in previous lessons that we were discussing Hadith al-Sahih, so certain masail that relates to Hadith al-Sahih. So of those masail that we have covered, and will continue, that in previous lessons that we have covered Hadith al-Sahih, what is meant by this. Also we discussed the shurut Hadith al-Sahih, and as we know that Hadith al-Sahih, by way of its condition, it has 5 conditions. So we covered those 5 conditions with a little bit additional information to give more clarity or more explanation on what is said to be shurut Hadith al-Sahih, that are khamsa, these 5 criteria that are in place as outlined and agreed upon by the ulama of Hadith. Then after we explained those, we discussed matters regarding amal. What's the hukum al-amal bil Hadith al-Sahih? So what's the ruling on acting upon Hadith that is authentic? So we are also explaining that with that matter, that the ulama that I've mentioned that Hadith al-Sahih is considered to be one hujjah, is a form of authority in Islam. Whether that Hadith that is authenticated, it is said to be Hadith al-Mutawatir, that comes with many narrators, as we have covered, or Hadith al-Ahad. So a Hadith al-Ahad also, if they have been authenticated based upon these criteria that are in place, then those Hadith also are considered to be a form of proof in Islam. And those proof, it is used as a proof in matters that relates to aqaid, matters of belief, Islamic belief and faith, creed, matters also matter that relates to halal and haram, ahkam or sharia, matter that relates to saying something is halal and something is haram, or Islamic judgment on thing, and also matter that relates to al-adab wal-akhlaq, also matters pertaining to the person's conduct and behavior. So any matter relating to the deen, that a Hadith al-Sahih, it can be used as it is an authority on any topic. Second, that they mention that also Hadith al-Sahih, that it's also a hujjah, and also it is to be acted upon. It is wajib, is compulsory upon a Muslim to act upon a hadith that is said to be sahih or hadith al-maqbul. So we have mentioned of those who have discussed those matters, Imam Shafi rahimahullah, of the earth that I've discussed in his book Al-Risala, that emphasize the importance of acting upon hadith which is authentic, whether in matters of aqidah, matters of fiqh, or any other matter pertaining to ad-deen. Then the next matter we'll discuss inshallah ta'ala, that we mention also, the ulama mentioned concerning maratib hadith al-sahih. So they mentioned the hadith al-sahih, that they are on different levels. So hadith al-sahih on different levels, and they have mentioned regarding concerning those maratib of hadith al-sahih, that they have mentioned that of the higher degree of hadith al-sahih, that they are mentioned regarding maratib al-sahih, that they'll mention one, the first and the highest degree. So what are the different degrees of a hadith regarding its authenticity? So hadith that is authentic are not on the same level. Some may be more authentic than others. So of those matters that they will mention, that the ulama put somewhat a system in place, or something as a scale, to have an idea regarding the authenticity of the hadith, or the level of authenticity or sahih of the first degree or level of authenticity. They mention what is agreed upon between Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim. So hadith that is said to be muttafaqun alayh, that is agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim, then that is said to be of the highest degree of authenticity. The highest degree of authenticity is those hadith that have been agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim, and they refer to by hadith as muttafaqun alayh, as one of the terms that are used in describing those hadith. So that's the highest level, where a hadith is narrated upon a particular sahabi with a particular wording. So that hadith is, and it is found in Bukhari and Muslim, that hadith is said to be muttafaqun alayh. And as we know that some of the ulama have also given effort regarding collecting hadith of that fall into that category. So an example of works of the ulama in gathering hadith that are said to be muttafaqun alayh. Of those works, you have many of the past and of present, but of those more renowned, of those, Umdatul Ahkam by Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. So Umdatul Ahkam by Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi is said to be those ahadith that are agreed upon between Bukhari and Muslim that relates to matters relating to fiqh. And also another book that also the author have concentrated particular and gathering ahadith that are muttafaqun alayh, the book that is called Lu'lu wal Marjan fima ittafaq alayhi shaykhan. So the book Lu'lu wal Marjan by by Baqi, then that also of those those books that gather hadith that is said to be muttafaqun alayh. So the person want a quick reference for the hadith of that level, they go to sources that we have just mentioned as some examples. Another of the next level, the second degree of hadith of authenticity, they mention ma infarada al-Bukhari bi ikhrajihi fi sahihi wa laysa fi Muslim. Those hadith that the second level of authenticity, those hadith that have been reported by Imam Bukhari in his Sahih, that is not found with Muslim. Those hadith, the second level, hadith that have been narrated by Imam Bukhari, not found with Imam Muslim, not found with Imam Muslim. And that's in his Sahih, as Imam Bukhari rahimahullah of several books. So this is in particular to his book As-Sahih. The third degree of authenticity that ulama have mentioned are those hadith that Imam Muslim rahimahullah have mentioned in his Sahih and not mentioned by Bukhari. So the third degree are those hadith that are narrated by Imam, reported by Imam Muslim in his Sahih, in his book of hadith in his book that is collected regarding hadith to Sahih, but those hadith are not found in Sahih Bukhari. The next fourth degree, ma kana ala shartihima. The fourth degree are those hadith that are said to be upon the condition of Bukhari and Muslim, not found in Bukhari and Muslim. So the fourth degree of authenticity that the ulama have mentioned, those hadith that are said to be of the condition of Bukhari and Muslim, but not mentioned in Bukhari nor Muslim. That's the fourth level. The fifth level that they mention, ma kana ala shart al-Bukhari wa laysa fi Sahih Bukhari. That the fifth level are those hadith that are said to be of the condition, that those hadith of authenticity, they are said to be of the degree of authenticity of Imam Bukhari in his Sahih, but they are not found in his Sahih. So they're said to be of they are according to the condition of Imam Bukhari, as he said for his Sahih, but those hadith are not reported by Bukhari in his Sahih. And the sixth would be those hadith that are said to be of the condition of Imam Muslim. The sixth would be of those hadith that are said to be of the standard or of the level of authenticity mentioned by Imam Muslim, even though those hadith, they are not in Sahih Muslim. So hadith that are equal to Imam Muslim, but they are not in his Sahih. And then they mentioned the last, ma kana ala, that those hadith that are said to be of not restricted to the condition of Bukhari, but that are according to the condition of authenticity, not found in any of those books mentioned, Bukhari and Muslim. So hadith that fulfill the criteria of authenticity, not found in Bukhari or Muslim, or upon the condition of Bukhari and Muslim. So that's so any hadith are said to be authentic, not related to the condition of Bukhari or Muslim. So that's concerning. So any hadith that have been authenticated by the ulama, not according, but are not upon the condition of Bukhari or Muslim, or mentioned by Bukhari or Muslim. So those are the level of authenticity of that ulama of hadith have mentioned. So that's concerning a general scale to measure, have an idea of the level of authenticity of a hadith. And that regarding concerning the majmu', that's concerned that's a general scale to be used. So you might find hadith that is in Muslim, but its authenticity is greater than that of, is higher than that of Bukhari. So we have a particular hadith that it is of a level, of a standard that at times maybe greater, higher than that of some of the hadith in Sahih Bukhari. So it's a general scale measuring tool to be used. The next of those things that we'll mention, of that matter, usually spin off of that discussion regarding asanid. So that's said to be the most authentic asanid. So you find the books of hadith that they'll try to give us an idea of some of those hadith that are considered to be the most authentic asanid. So this person narrates upon this person until the end. They'll give us a list so you can identify if you see these type of asanid, these type of chains of narrators, then this is of those ones of a high standard regarding authenticity. So those sometimes are referred to as most asanid, the most authentic asanid. So as for the matter, the ulama mentioned that in general, to say one particular asanid are the most authentic, the ulama kind of somewhat, they have regulated that matter, referenced that matter more so regarding Ba'da Sahaba or Ba'da Ruwat. The most authentic hadith that goes back to Abu Hurairah, the most authentic isnad going back to Ibn Umar and the likes. So they can somewhat regulate it to particular individuals as regarding those authenticity in isnad. So this particular most authentic isnad going back to Abu Hurairah, the most authentic isnad going back to Aisha, Mu'mineen, the most anha, the most authentic isnad going back to such and such person. So they can somewhat, they more follow that method rather than the general most authentic scale. So that at times if a person regarding if times of so the person one is familiar of knowing of those asanid are said to be the most authentic, so you have an idea regarding which sahabi with which asanid chains are said to be the most authentic, so you become familiar with those ones. And also in case of tarjih, if there's a time where there seems to be some conflict, then you might give a precedent to the one that is the most authentic. You have sometimes ibarat that are used by the ulama regarding, I mentioned, isnaduhu sahih, asah, shay, fi hadha bab, what's the most authentic narration in this bab, on this particular topic. So you have also those type of isnaduhu sahih, hadithun sahih. What does these things, do they mean the same or they vary in meaning? So they mention hadithun sahih, that what is meant by this is that the hadith, it comply with the condition, a condition of authenticity. So the hadith sahih mean the hadith have complied with all the criteria of authenticity. So it's said to be hadith sahih. So all those all the criteria, the conditions are met regarding that particular hadith. So both the sanad and the matan and what revolves around this, that everything is in place. So the hadith is given the grade of being, is referred to as hadithun sahih. The second, they will mention isnaduhu sahih. Isnaduhu sahih. So what is meant by this? Does it mean that all the criteria, the 5 criteria of hadith is in place and fulfilled when it is said or the term is used, isnaduhu sahih? They have mentioned regarding concerning what is meant regarding concerning this concerning, it means concerning that not necessarily that isnaduhu sahih, that means concerning isnad regarding ittisal sanad, adalatul ra'sa, the isnad is continuous. That second, adalatul rawat, the narrator is said to be of people of integrity and reliable. And fourth, that that they have good memory, the hadith have complied with all those conditions. So it's most of the isnad. But you might find that matters regarding adam al-illah wa adam al-shudud may not apply to that hadith, or those conditions were not looked into. So hadith isnaduhu sahih is regarding concern that at times it may mean that the isnad, that the main study and investigation so far is on the isnad of that hadith, or this particular hadith that is in front of you, that isnadu sahih, meaning that, from what is apparent, that the hadith are fulfill certain criteria, maybe not all the criteria. So that's concerning what is meant by this. So that's concerning isnaduhu sahih. And I mentioned that's judgment on the zahir isnad. That's concerning a judgment on what is apparent from the isnad. So matter regarding al-illah, al-khafi, al-qadiha, that also maybe those things were not yet investigated or looked into. And that requires comparing. So isnadu sahih meaning the isnad in front of you. The hadith in front of you. Based upon this particular isnad, not taking consideration and study of other isnad related to that specific hadith. They mention also of the terms used, asah, shay, fi bab or fi hadha bab, that also this what is mean concerning that of time, that what is meant by this regarding that, the most authentic, and this sometimes compared to the hadith that are being discussed. So you might have a group of hadith relating to a particular topic, a specific topic. So you have 5 hadith on a particular topic. So the ulama look at those hadith, you see, I might say this particular one is the most authentic from those 5 hadith on this particular topic. So at times that can mean the hadith is actually sahih compared to the other hadiths on that topic, or it could mean the hadith is not authentic, but is the most authentic compared to the others that are also of a lot of maybe more severe weakness. So all the hadith are 5 hadith, all of whom are daif, weak hadith, but one of them is more cleaner compared to the others, but it's daif, it's weak. So they might mention that asah, hada asah shay fi hada bab, that this particular one is maybe the most authentic compared to the other sister hadith related to the same discussion. But all of them are weak. All of which are weak. So as a matter which is a nisbi, is a comparison between something which is similar. Something which is similar. So at times it could mean authenticity, and at times it could mean, no, the hadith, even though I say this is said to be of that description or labeled as such, but it is still not authentic. So with next discussion, we'll mention Madhan, Hadith Sahih. What are some of the books that you can use? The main books are some of the books that the author stipulate authenticity for his book. What are some of these sources? Madhan, Hadith Sahih. So books that you can use that are the author stipulate as of his condition, made a criteria for his book that whatever he collects is authentic. That's what is meant by, as we said with this matter, Madhan, Wujud, Hadith Sahih. Madhan, Wujud, Hadith Sahih. Or Kutub, Musannafa fi Sahih, Khasa. So books that are written only to collect hadith that are authentic. So of those books, you have the ulama who have made this a standard for their book. So of the renowned ones regarding of those books that we mentioned some. We have of old Sahih Bukhari by Imam al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim by Imam Muslim, and those are referred to as Sahihain. But those are referred to as Sahihain. So other books, so those are the two that are more prominent and more renowned of all the books of Islam. So of the main books of Islam that are more renowned to most Muslims would be these two, Sahih al-Bukhari wa Sahih al-Muslim. So it refers to as Sahih al-Bukhari because of the name of the author, which he compiled a book of authenticity, and also Sahih Muslim by Imam Muslim rahimahullah also stipulated that he would author a book, a collection of hadith, that he only mentioned hadith that are authentic on various topics. So of those ones, al-Bukhari and Muslim, we just mentioned that in brief. Sahih al-Bukhari, as what is referred to as unknown by most, that Sahih Bukhari is not the name of the book. So Imam Bukhari rahimahullah was Abu Abdullah, Imam al-Hafiz, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Ju'fi al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, that he compiled a book that is referred to or named, or it is referred to as Sahih al-Bukhari. As for the actual name, it is, the ulama mentioned, you have some of them of a discussion regarding what's the actual name of Sahih Bukhari. So you even find that some have written a book on this. So you have like a small book have been written regarding trying to discuss the issue regarding what's the actual name of Sahih Bukhari, and the different aqwal of the ulama that have been mentioned regarding this particular discussion. So this discourse as to what's the name of Sahih Bukhari, there's books that have been written on this topic. So of the names that are mentioned, the more renowned concerning Al-Jami', Al-Musnad, Al-Sahih, Al-Mukhtasar. Al-Jami', Al-Musnad, Al-Sahih, Al-Mukhtasar min umuri Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam wa sunanihi wa ayyami. That's of the names, more of the names that are mentioned regarding the name of Sahih Bukhari. So again, Al-Jami', Al-Musnad, Al-Sahih, Al-Mukhtasar. And each of those words carry a meaning. Min umuri Rasulullah alayhi salatu wassalam, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wassalam, wa sunanihi wa ayyami. So that's of the names that are put forward regarding the name of Sahih Bukhari. And you might find that many of the prints that they may give that name. Another name that is put forward regarding the name of Sahih Bukhari, that some mention a difference of Al-Jami', Al-Sahih, Al-Musnad, Al-Mukhtasar. So Al-Jami', so you have Al-Jami', Al-Sahih, Al-Musnad, Al-Mukhtasar, min umuri, or some mention min hadith Rasulullahi, min hadithi Rasulillahi alayhi salam, wa sunanihi wa ayyami. So that's after. So a difference in, I'll mention that, so one of both of Al-Jami', one of Al-Musnad, the other as Al-Sahih, Al-Jami' Al-Sahih, Al-Jami' Al-Musnad, then the other of, so you have those, a slight difference between those little wordings, but all consist of those four important words: Al-Jami', Al-Musnad, Al-Sahih, Wal-Mukhtasar. But it may vary as to which come after the other. But Al-Jami', then you have Al-Musnad or Al-Sahih, or so we have that slight difference amongst them. So that's concerning the most authentic books in Hadith. So of those Madhan books of Hadith that you can use as a main reference in knowing Hadith that are authentic as the criteria of Imam Bukhari, then this will be one of those references or sources of this. Another source of knowing Hadith to Sahih is the work of Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala, as we had mentioned. So Imam Muslim, Abu was Imam Abu Hussein, is kunya Abu Hussein, and he's of the student of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, or rahimahullah ta'ala, and who's Muslim ibn Hajjaj ibn Muslim al-Qushayri. Muslim ibn Hajjaj ibn Muslim al-Qushayri rahimahullah ta'ala, who died 261, who died around 261, and Bukhari rahimahullah died 256, around the year 256 al-Hijri. So overall, those have to send. As for the name also of Imam Muslim, the actual name of his book, then also you have like a discussion between the ulama on this. Based upon, some may mention the particular way, Al-Musnad, Al-Sahih. So you have that difference, Al-Musnad, as some of the ulama may refer to the book of Imam Muslim as Al-Musnad. Some may say Al-Musnad Al-Sahih. So you have a discussion regarding the actual name of Sahih Muslim. But if you find that some of the more recent prints that are coming out regarding Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, that of those who are put for the name of Sahih Bukhari as being the name which is Al-Musnad, Al-Sahih, Al-Mukhtasar. So again, Al-Musnad, meaning a hadith is musnad, you have a complete chain going back to the Prophet alayhi salam. Al-Musnad, Al-Sahih, Al-Mukhtasar, min sunan, binaqlin adl, an adlin, an Rasulillahi alayhi salatu wassalam. So that's the name that have been put forward regarding the actual name of Sahih Muslim. So again, Al-Musnad, Al-Sahih, Al-Mukhtasar, as both Bukhari and Muslim, that I mentioned that their collection is not to collect everything that they that is authentic, but some of that which is authentic. So it's a mukhtasar, a summary. Then it mentioned al-musnad as-sahih al-mukhtasar min as-sunan binaqlin ad an adl an Rasulillahi alayhi salatu wassalam. So that's concerning the name that has been put forward as the name of Imam Muslim collection. And some have mentioned that the name is just al-musnad, and others mentioned al-musnad as-sahih. But as we mentioned that of those of more recent, the recent prints, decent, good prints, that they try to be precise and look and investigate regarding the name of Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. And we have many prints that are out there, but some have put more effort with the working from certain institutions and research centers. So other books are referred to as Sahih that ulama have mentioned regarding other that they mentioned that we have Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. So we have Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah, also of those that stipulate authenticity. So we have Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. So of those we have Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah, that a portion of the book of Ibn Khuzaymah rahimahullah. Ibn Khuzaymah is in print, and Ibn Khuzaymah rahimahullah, he died 311 al-Hijri. He died 311 Hijri. So a portion of his book, Ibn Khuzaymah rahimahullah, is in print. So he has then a fourth of those books, Sahih Abi Hatim, Sahih li Abi Hatim Muhammad ibn Hibban al-Busti, who died 354. So they mention as Sahih Ibn Hibban. So it referred to as Sahih Ibn Hibban. So the book of Ibn Hibban, that when he wrote the book, that actually he has to give, that's not the name, it actually have a name that he has given to the book, or somewhat it's referred to as Sahih. They mention concerning that al-Musnad is as-Sahih ala taqasim wal anwa. That's the name of the book. Al-Musnad as-Sahih ala taqasim wal anwa. And the book, regarding that original book that he wrote, of that original book, it's somewhat difficult to use it because of how it has been organized. Or the author, Ibn Hibban, organized the book, somewhat been very difficult. So you find out of the ulama, Ibn Balban, others who have gone and tried to reorganize the book to make it more easier and accessible to all. But the original way in which the author Ibn Hibban structured and organized the book, difficult. As of those of the ulama, sometimes they want ilm for the person to put effort, not make everything easy and palatable. They want to make effort and search. If you're a talib al-ilm, they always say, no, a talib al-ilm shouldn't be just, everything is easy for them. So Ibn Hibban book is of those that require some effort, but then it has been somewhat been reorganized to make it easier and more easier to access the hadith in this particular book. So both the original as-Sahih, al-Musnad as-Sahih ala taqasim wa anwa, that's in print, and also the other prints of Ibn Balban. Then also of those other works that are there, that we have al-Mustadrak ala Sahihain, al-Mustadrak ala Sahihain. So also that of those concerning lil Hakim. So Hakim, Abi Abdullah al-Hakim. So al-Hakim rahimahullah ta'ala, he died 405 al-Hijri, 405 al-Hijri. So he wrote that book. So those are some of the works regarding those who have stipulated authenticity. As for those books that they are not to the criteria of Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, those others, and you have, we have mentioned some, not all, some of the ulama past, that their book is not to the criteria of Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. So you find that in some of those books you have Hadith al-Daif. You have Hadith al-Daif. So Mustadrak. So generally you find Hadith that is Daif, but overall that's the criteria that they've made for their book, authenticity only. So you have others, Ibn Awana, Mustadrak ala Sahih Muslim, also Ibn Jarud, Al-Muntaqa, that are books also that relates to Hadith al-Sahih, but and others, and others. A Hadith al-Mukhtara by the Adin al-Maqdisi. So as we mentioned, that most of what we have mentioned are books that are in print. But overall, those are of those who stipulate or sources of reference to hadith authentic. But said those are the ulama of past. As for of those also, I try to keep up that tradition. So Imam Bukhari, Muslim, Ibn Khuzaymah, Ibn Hibban, Al-Hakim, and others have that idea regarding collecting books, ahadith that are only authentic according to their criteria. But then you find that also this tradition has been followed and upheld by ulama of the past, of contemporaries, of recent years, of recent time. And of those more renowned books, where you find that the author tried to collect ahadith that are only authentic. Example of those, you have the likes of contemporary of our time, that we have the likes of Sheikh Muhammad Nasiruddin Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, one of ulama hadith of contemporary, and of those who help in the revival of the science of hadith, of those who are helped in the revival of ilm al-hadith, in people giving interest to ilm al-hadith. So Sheikh Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he have al-silsila al-sahiha. So you have a book that is called al-silsila al-sahiha, where he collect in that book that come in many volumes, hadith that he have graded, so hadith that he, Sheikh Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, have graded to be authentic. Then also Sheikh Albani himself also, in some of the books that he have done, worked on, that books such as Ashabu Kutubu Sunan, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Nasahi, Ibn Majah, that he split them, divide them into two. As-Sahih, Abu Dawood, Daif, Abu Dawood, Sahih, At-Tirmidhi, Daif, At-Tirmidhi, Sahih, An-Nasa'i, Daif, An-Nasa'i, Sahih, Ibn Majah, and Daif, Ibn Majah. So you can understand what Shaykh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, he has these books that he has given those original book of those authors that he have checked and have graded those books, but he divided them into two parts. So all the hadith that's mentioned in Sahih of Abu Dawood, Sahih Abu Dawood, is found in that collection, and also he has on those volumes, and then you have a volume that may have owned the hadith that are said to be daif from Abu Dawood. So Shaykh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, he took that path, that even though not something which is popular regarding concern of the ulama of past, but Shaykh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, on his own ijtihad, that he thought that would be of benefit. But the main thing that he divide authentic, those are authentic and those that are not. And you find that others who have done. So you find that others also have worked regarding trying to collect hadith which is authentic only. We find a like of Shaykh Muqbil, rahimahullah ta'ala. So Shaykh Muqbil ibn Hadi al-Wadi, one of the ulama of Yemen, that also have done something similar regarding collecting a hadith that he graded as authentic in a particular collection. So those are some of the efforts of some of the ulama. Those are some of the efforts of some of the ulama. But also to that's something to be mindful of. That, for example, the efforts of those of both contemporary of the ulama regarding their collection of hadith sahih, and also you have others who have done this. You have books also, you find that of contemporary Talabatul Ilm wal Mashaykh who have written in the topic of hadith, that I have, for example, a book of Ahadith Sahih fi Asbab al-Nuzul, regarding Asbab al-Nuzul, regarding ayat, Al-Quran ayat, that regarding the hadith that relates to the Quran of Asbab ayat are revealed, or why ayat are revealed. You might have hadith, so you might have a book, As-Sahih, Asbab al-Nuzul. So you have those type of works. You have those on particular topics. So you might find some of the Mashaykh and Talabatul Ilm may have works, or you find books of that nature. So overall, with some of the contemporaries, that for a person that's their grading on the hadith. And in most part, they may be correct, but at times you might find that some others of the people who specialize in hadith may disagree with their judgment, may have a judgment other than what is mentioned by some of those that are said to be well known of passing judgment on hadith. So those are said to know sources regarding hadith sahih, of those of the ulama of classical works, and then you have the more contemporary works on books of hadith sahih. So of ibarat that sometimes is mentioned by some, that they'll state regarding certain words and regarding does the isnad being graded as being authentic mean the hadith is authentic? does it naturally mean the isnad is authentic? It means the hadith is ultimately becomes authentic. That I would say no, though sometimes may not be the case. So if I have isnad that is authentic, but the matin is fihi, for example, hadith shadh and the likes. So those are things sometimes the isnad, but also you might find things that may declare the hadith not to be one which is authentic overall because of other factors in the matin. Or you might find a part of the matter fil ittirab, that you might find an ittirab, that it seems to be clashes, that is unable to be harmonized, so it may dismiss the hadith being authentic. But of those, a next thing that we'll try to, some of the ulama at times, that they mention regarding that, Kutub as-Sitta. So Kutub as-Sitta, that these 6 books are referred to as the books, the 6 books or the 6 main books of hadith collection: Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah. So these are referred to as Kutub as-Sitta. Bukhari, Muslim, Sunan Abu Dawud, Jami' al-Tirmidhi, Sunan al-Nasa'i, wa Sunan Ibn Majah. So these are referred to as general concerning Kutub al-Sitta. But sometimes in the work of some of the ulama, you might find or hear with some that they may use another term in describing the 6th book, which they use a term or they use the language of Sihah as-Sitt. Sihah as-Sitt, the 6 authentic books. So they refer to Kutub al-Sitta, the 6 books of hadith, this main collection that we just mentioned, as being Sihah as-Sitta, the 6 authentic collection. So is this ta'bir, is this terminology or this way of describing these books as these 6 books of all being authentic, is that the case or not? And is using this wording correct or not? So I said if we were to look at the reality of these books, then to say Kutub al-Sitta, these 6 books, that everything that they collect is authentic, then that's not the reality. Then that's not the case, except for Bukhari and Muslim. So put on Bukhari and Muslim as an exception. But as for the other 4, then that's not the case. That you have hadith, majority of the hadith in those books are authentic, but you do have a percentage or some hadith in those books that are not authentic. And in some cases even mawdu', even fabricated. So in outside Bukhari and Muslim, with in Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, you will find some hadith that are said to be da'if. But that's a minority. That's the bulk of the hadith in those books are authentic. And also something that a person regarding with books and the books of Islam and the science of Islam, that sometimes try to be as precise as possible. So sometimes I hear a person might say to know that in the book of Tirmidhi, in the book of Abu Dawud, there's many hadith, loads of hadith that are not authentic. When the person says loads, many of the hadith in Abu Dawud is not authentic, what do they mean? That the larger percentage is hadith which is weak? So, and that's not the case. The weak hadith in Abu Dawud and those books will be that would be less, the percentage will be less, but it's not, so is sometimes to be mindful of those terminologies. So that to know that, so overall, saying Sihah as-Sitta, of the ulama mentioned that, not a correct statement to describe these 6 books. It may apply to Bukhari and Muslim with a slight discussion. But as for the other 4 books, then without doubt, as one, even themselves did not attribute to their book full authenticity, nor made this as a criteria for their book. So Abu Dawud, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Tirmidhi did not outline when they made their book that they will only collect and will mention hadith which is authentic. That's not their criteria. And even their books, they at times will identify weak hadith. And third, the book itself, the reality of the book, there's hadith which is da'if in the book. yes, most of the hadith may be maqbool, but there's a percentage of weak hadith. So that's the reality of the book that no one can deny. So they describe the book as being authentic. Then that's not the case. They mentioned that some of the makhfutat, as some of those books, like Al-Jami al-Tirmidhi, you might have the word Sahih on it, but that maybe that's the work of the nusakh. Those are the work of the people who are the scribes, not the work of, or the name, or that wording being used by at-Tirmidhi. But maybe someone who came and wrote it, the hadith in Tirmidhi as the scribe, he might put on the cover Sahih Jami al-Tirmidhi. That's him, not the original author. So to be mindful of those matters. So that inshallah ta'ala we have so we have mentioned regarding concerning those matters, and generally concerning Aqsam al-Hadith al-Sahih, that I mentioned that a Hadith al-Sahih, that what the ulama as Hadith al-Maqbool, but in this case Sahih, of two categories. Sahih لذاته, on its own accord, wal Hadith al-Sahih لغيره, with Hadith it being strengthened with others to raise to the degree of being authentic. So the Hadith on its own may be Hasan, but when another Hadith that are similar, with another Hadith that are similar, or with other chains, asanid add to that Hadith, it elevate that Hadith which is Hasan with other Hadith which is Hasan, it can elevate it to Hadith which is Sahih. So refer to as Sahih li ghayri, it is authenticated with assistance, with support. Hadith Sahih li dhatihi, that it is authentic on its own accord, on its own. So those are matters regarding Hadith as-Sahih and some of the masahil that relate to Hadith as-Sahih. So this inshallah ta'ala will be continuing to pursue the discussion regarding the book At-Talkhis, and inshallah ta'ala we'll discuss what follows in the next session. وبالله تعالى توفيق وهذه إلى السبيل والآخرة ورحمة الأمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How long was that one?